back to another edition of the Better Contractor. Today, we're joined by Billy Davis with Arborscapes. Billy, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Doing well. And also joined by my trusty sidekick, Travis, the quote master. What's up, man?
Good to see you guys.
Do you have 3 or 4 quotes memorized for today?
I don't. They're in there somewhere, so we'll let them organically come out.
I'm definitely.
It's funny how they stick with you. I mean,
well, you read a lot too, don't you?
Yeah. So, it's finding the appropriate one and matching it to the topic. Sometimes it really comes out, and then later, like, man, this would have been really good. But they just kind of bounce around in there.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. So, Billy, tell me a little bit about your story. So, I was kind of reading the notes for the podcast, and you started young, which is always kind of interesting to see these guys that started off like, well, and yours is really young. So let's start there. Tell us a little bit about this.
I started really young. So I was in 5th grade, so you're, 10, 11 years old. And long story short, it was a friend of mine saying, hey, man, let's go knock on some doors, see if people want us to cut the grass or rake the leaves or whatever. And so we did, and we went to this house, and I think the folks had just moved in, and the leaves must have been 6 feet deep, and, knock on the door, and they're like, oh, that'd be great, how much? And we're like, don't have a clue, and they're like, all right, well, what, let us think about it, and how about we call your parents and talk with them about it. All right, great. And I remember that night them calling and, talking to my parents, and they said they'd pay us $75, so $37.50 each, and were my parents okay with that? And my parents said, that's between you and him. I don't care, And, so anyway, so I think it was like 2.5 months later, we finally finished up. It wasn't really that long, but it definitely it took a lot. And but I had a check. I mean, I can still visually see that check, for $37.50, man, and with my name on it. And I remember going to the bank and cashing with my dad, and I was rich. and $37.50, 30 years ago, it was a lot more. But anyway, so I just kind of kept going around. The guy that I was doing it with, I think he really thought he was rich and decided he was going to retire.
At 10 years old, that's awesome.
And, give him credit. He was a year older than me, So, yeah. So it just kind of kept growing from there, and people were hiring me to take care of their lawn and everything, cut the grass, whatever, and I had a riding lawnmower that I saved up and bought, and that was my truck. I had a little 4x8 trailer from Northern Hydraulics that I'd pull behind and put my push mower and weed eater, leaf blowers in, whatever. Then I ended up getting one of the commercial walk behinds. And then somebody had asked if I'd cut some limbs off of a tree, and I'm like, sure, so snuck my dad's chainsaw and ladder out and go over there, and got knocked off the ladder. Good thing I'm small. My buddy Big Danny caught me, saved my life. And I wasn't smart enough to stop then. Like, oh man, that didn't work out. This seems like a challenge. Like, nature against me. So anyways, kept doing it, and I was really, really lucky. I was 13 years old, met a guy that was working across the street from us, from my neighbor, taking down some trees on a Saturday morning. Had a full-time job at the power company, and then he had the side business doing trees. And great guy, and he kind of, showed me the equipment and the stuff on the truck and everything, and spent some time with me. And then I guess you could tell that I was pretty engaged, and he said, hey, if your parents are cool with it, you can go with us the rest of the day. And so I run home and asked mom and dad, and they're like, yeah, it looks professional, uniforms, hard hats, safety gear, like we're good with it. You're gonna do it, so you may as well learn how to do it. And so yeah, for the next whatever, well, I guess till I got my driver's license. So the next 4 years, he'd pick me up at 5 o'clock in the morning and get home 8 o'clock at night or whenever it was. We worked some long days and had a lot of fun. But I mean, he trusted me and took his time with me. He was patient and taught me. His focus really was just tree removal. He could care less about saving trees. Still could care less about saving trees. And somewhere, I don't know where or why, but I was like, man, there's kind of more to this. And I had the lawn care thing, and I was still doing the trees and everything. And then when I was in high school, I guess it was my sophomore year, at the tech center, they had a horticulture program. So we went and visited, checked it out. And I remember going home that night and saying to my parents, like, hey, I want to go to this tech center for this horticulture program there. And my parents were not too in favor of it because, that's not what you do, right? And need to go to college. I'm like, I've got no interest in college. I don't think any college is going to accept me with my grades. And this is what I'm going to do for a living. So why are we going to waste the money and time going to college? I guess I don't know how I ended up convincing them because I guarantee that wasn't not the right argument. But so my junior year, I was at the tech center, and senior year, I was at the tech center, and we took a field trip to Virginia Tech with the FFA for a competition. And my teacher introduced me to a program there. It's the Ag Tech program. It's an associate's degree. And so I was kind of thinking, like, man, I can make it 2 years, and maybe bring my grades up a little bit and everything, but I could do 2 years, and so that's what I did. And when I was finishing up, and this was in 2002, when I was finishing up at Virginia Tech, I got an email from one of these large companies, more landscaping, but big commercial kind of company. And they were always up there doing recruiting and everything, and I'd talk with them and everything, and always said, I'm a tree guy. But they called and they said, hey, we actually have a position for you in Maryland. We do actually have a tree division there. And so I was like, well, all right, let me see what that's about. Went up there, and long story short, I took the job, and it was an absolute nightmare from the very first day. Talking about this multi-million dollar company, nationwide company, no safety equipment. I mean, climbing trees the way that it was done before my time even, and I can tell you, like our guys now, they don't climb the way that I did when I started. It's advanced so much. But yeah, it was like, what is going on here? Safety wasn't part of it. So I didn't last there very long. I realized that they could not change very quickly. They weren't particularly interested in changing. And then I think I kind of had realized this, but there was a book I read several years ago called Starting with Why by Simon Sinek. And that just tied it all together for me. And I'm like, yep, their why is strictly about making money, period. And how they do it is through landscaping or tree care. But their why or purpose for being in business is to make money, which did not align with mine at all. So I take a different approach, and my why has always been more about helping people, helping give the right advice and recommendations on how to care for their trees, not to be out there just selling them something, but to actually care about them and to build a relationship with them, earn their trust. And you got a client for life. And you do that and you do it right, the money's going to be there. It'll follow.
Yeah.
I mean, don't misunderstand. Like, money is part of it for sure. We got to be profitable. I got to stay in business. I got to put food on the table. I got 40 some families that are relying on me every day. So there is a lot of pressure, a lot of responsibility there. But you still do it ethically and for the right reasons, and it all works out.
Is that something your sales team is kind of geared towards now, is helping instead of like a more aggressive sales approach, just more focused on helping and building that relationship?
We are the absolute worst salespeople by definition. We've it's been a long time since we've done it. We've hired like sales consultants before, and I think they end up just like throwing in the flag and quitting. They're like, but we take those assessments, and I think first time I took one of the assessments, and like I was the lowest scoring person that fit the mold of a salesperson, and in the I remember the consultant looking at my numbers and everything. He's like, "This just doesn't make sense." I'm like, "Well, I think your approach doesn't make sense." Like, just be honest with somebody. Tell them the truth. If they don't need it done, tell them they don't need it done. As soon as you tell them that, whatever you tell them that needs to be done, now they trust you.
Do you know what your customer retention rate is by any chance?
Company overall, so about 80%, a little bit above. I try to be more conservative with that number, but 80% of our business is coming from referral and retained.
That's awesome. That's why is that trust factor.
Yep.
That just takes longer. So the larger national company, it was maybe very short-sighted, short-term thinking. They were making money up front, but they were sacrificing the long game. And they continually have to feed that pipeline in with short-term money and sales in order to keep that game going. That's maybe low bid it comes in versus best value. Get real flashy marketing and they just got to get that next fix, if you will, and they sacrifice the long-term game. And so yours, it definitely it's a war of attrition. Build the reputation and reputation for honesty and doing things right and a force in the community takes time. So yeah, it's definitely the long game.
When did you make the transition from kind of the sole proprietorship to Arborscapes? When was Arborscapes formed?
Arborscapes was formed in August 2002. I stayed in Maryland for I think it was 2 months total. And I'd already put in my resignation, but I did feel bad at the same time. Looking back, I don't know why I did. Just because I'd given on my word that I was, I wanted it to work, but giving them time to find a replacement. I had 2 crews that I was responsible for, and so yeah.
Do you still do any lawn care, or are you strictly tree now?
Oh God, no! I don't even cut my own grass. I don't think. I've cut enough grass. Man, if I absolutely love cutting grass though, if I can do it when I want to do it and not because I have to do it. So yeah, no, we got out of the lawn care. I guess in 2002 when I moved back home from Maryland and started the company back up. Back up one second, I guess a little bit. And before I left for college, I had a pretty decent sized lawn care uh, client base, and I had 2 friends that were had kind of just started a lawn care business too, and so I said, look, here's the deal, y'all take care of these clients of mine while I'm gone, and then help give y'all a foundation to get started with, and then when I get back, I'll take my clients back, and um, I don't think there was many clients left, and I wasn't interested in the lawn care nearly as much until I started getting hungry and needed some money, and I was like, well, I better do whatever I can to make money right now. And so I started doing the lawn care again a little bit, and then Hurricane Isabel hit in 2003. There was no time for lawn care, so so that ended again, and then we did. Initially my plan was to not be doing the arboriculture. It was to be doing the landscape design and installation. Like um, I enjoy seeing the results. You what I really did not like doing was taking a masterpiece of a design to somebody and they say they didn't like it. I didn't respond too well to that, which is just me. you and then plants dying and you had to replace them, and I had like, you got to water these things, like, why am I responsible for, like, where did we start guaranteeing the life of anything? Is just mind boggling to me. But they do it on goldfish and on plants, and so yeah, 2005 we got out of the landscape side altogether and just focused on the arboriculture.
Okay. In the show notes, you mentioned it's a tough industry to scale and to start, and you mentioned high overhead and then tough to find the right talent. And the second one is one that I think almost everybody listening will resonate with. What are some things you've done that you've maybe done better than the competition here and there on finding the right talent and then retaining that talent?
It is really tough starting out in this business, I think, because you don't have as many of the options or the things that I think that we're doing now. In other words, you need people that already have the skill set. So there's a lot of luck that goes into it, and I've certainly had my fair share of luck, both good and bad luck. But you get lucky and you find the right person, a key person, and don't take them for granted. And I was really, really fortunate with a guy that I went to high school with and was actually my roommate in college, Andy Mason, who was working for another large uh, international company up in the DC area. And I remember he called me one day and he said, "Hey, I'm going to move back to Richmond, and was curious if you had like a opportunity for me." And I said, "Yeah, what would what do you want to do?" And he said, "I'd like to do the planned healthcare." I said, "Well, we don't have planned healthcare going or anything. I don't know anything about it, um, but yeah, that could be kind of cool. Like we could start that up, see how it goes." But I'm scared. I don't have anybody that's like really dependent on me. You're talking about like a career, And so, anyways, we worked it out. And his first day here, um, we were on a tree job, and I was up in the tree pruning, and he was like, "Hey, mind if I come up there too?" And he hadn't climbed, and I was like, "Well, this will be entertaining." I didn't even figure he would get off the ground, but I set a rope for him and everything. And like next thing I know, he's up in the tree, and not only up in the tree, he's like walked out on the limb, and he's like right behind me. And I'm like, "Who the heck are you, man? Like that you can't do that your first time." So long story short, he was a natural. Um, and very, very quickly, what it ended up turning into was um, me being in his way. And so kind of let him do his thing. I would be out on the job until it was to a point where something he could handle, or back then had to put food on the table too. So we did some sketchier jobs, and you know, I didn't want anybody doing anything that I wasn't willing to do myself. Um, so I would, be the one that would do something at a higher risk or whatever. And then once it got to a point where, he could take it, where I was comfortable with him taking it, he was probably comfortable taking it himself long before I was. But I'd let him take it from there and um, go and find work for tomorrow, or so to speak. And I think Travis is what you're talking about earlier. So, uh, he came on to start Plant Healthcare and did not do that. He ended up becoming my first crew leader and running the tree crew. And then I guess it was close to 5 years of him doing that, something like that, 4 years. And he said, "I think I want to do Plant Healthcare now," which we don't have Plant Healthcare. I'm like, "Okay." But like, who's going to take your role as a crew leader and the climber? And so that was kind of a challenge for a while that we went through, but I didn't really necessarily think about it this way then. But the reality is, he's no longer enjoying what he's doing, right? And he's looking for growth or something different. I can either provide that opportunity at Arborscapes, or I can say, "No, your job is this. That's the role that you're in. And we don't have another position." And he'll probably stay for a couple more months, maybe, if you're lucky, and then he's going to go find something that's making him happy again. And so you're going to lose him out of that position either way. So you got a great guy, a phenomenal person, somebody you want to be in the company. Not going to let him out of the company. We're going to create a position for him. And so we did. And he did Plant Healthcare for a few years, did a phenomenal job getting that established. He came to me one day and he said, I think I want to go back to running a tree crew. And I said, well, we already got somebody as a crew leader. Who's going to do the plant health care? And you know, so next thing you know, we have 2 tree crews, and you know, and then all the challenges come in when you're losing people and trying to keep everything moving, and you're like, I never intended, had a vision for any of this. I thought I was owner operator my whole rest of my life. That's what I thought this was going to be. So, like a structure, a plan for how to do this, and I wasn't. It was just piecemeal.
Law Diffusion Innovation was the one too where he broke it up, and I don't think it's his, but he's known for where you break out new ideas and changes and patterns into different segments of the. Um, I actually marked the page where it's innovators is the 2.5%, early adopters is 13.5%. And then you got the early majority, late majority, and laggards, which is the rest. But there's this kind of bell curve almost, yeah. But it's that first innovators and early adopters that most ideas and changes, if it's going to get into the rest of it, there's a chasm that it has to cross after that first 2 sections, and it's a small percentage, like 15%. But there's a chasm that if it doesn't cross into the early majority, ideas or technologies or things fail. But one of those big things is social proof, in that did it catch on? Was it a good idea? Did it cross that chasm, and did it develop social proof, and that other people were gravitating towards it and utilizing it, and then it propagates throughout the marketplace, and then that early majority catches on to it, and it skyrockets into mass use, and then the late adopters and the laggards. The laggards are the ones that they just adopt a new idea or a new thing just because they have to. The market went away, but and this industry is not immune to it. Like how so with the evolution of your business into the lawn care and then the arbor and focus on arbor scapes as far as the arbor support, and how has that changed over the last like 5 years as far as technology is concerned?
Well, it's definitely changed, and it's not all digital technology either. Like I would, um, or electronical or anything like. So I was saying earlier, like that company that I worked for that brief time, like the equipment that we had, the style of climbing, the way we climbed was like from the '60s, I guess. Um, but like our guys now would look at the way that I climb and be like, oh my gosh, like what kind of system is that? And like, man, we don't have all day for you to get up into that tree. They're at the top of a tree in like a minute, literally. And I'm like 45 minutes if I'm lucky. And uh, but the techniques and the gear and everything has changed so much, and so I would put that in the technology class, but then also like what gave it that big kickstart? How did that take place and occur and happen? And and that's the social media, I think. That's the internet taking off. And like on the tree care side, uh, which is when I say tree care, I'm really referring to like the guys that are out climbing trees, big trucks, equipment, chainsaws, you know, what most people think of with a tree company, I guess. Um, and so on that side of our company, we have just over 20 crew members, and out of those 20, um, only one and I say half, one and a half had prior industry experience. The other 19, 20 didn't. And you ask them well, how'd you find us? What piqued your interest, whatever. And like, I mean, the number of times that I've heard like, oh, I saw something on YouTube, like, oh, you know how when you're watching YouTube and you're looking up something on, I don't know, fishing, and next thing you know, it turns to like camping, and then it says you might be interested in this, and then it turns into like this guy climbing a tree and cutting the top out of it, and like that's what happened to me. And you're like, whoa, all right. It's pretty wild. I mean, we've got a lot of guys that have big college degrees, um, English majors, philosophy, history, um, uh, fine arts. Trying to think of some of the other ones. Um, Biology, but that one can apply. Um, Geology is one. Um,
Fine arts.
That's an interesting one. Is it fair to say that you've hired them based upon attributes and core values more so than skill, and then taking those attributes and training them to do it how you want to have it done?
you like when you're talking with them, and again, I'm like really well. I think it overlaps in this case, but um, like it is two different people for our plant healthcare side versus the tree care side. They are for the most part two different people. Now, they can certainly be some crossover, but for the tree care side, like biggest thing, passion. Like, and I don't even really care what it is that you have passion for. Like, you need somebody that's got some passion. So many people that don't have passion about anything, I feel like, they're just gonna walk around moping. But there's something that they're passionate about, and then there's something that they're really interested in and curious about with this opportunity. Um, they got to enjoy teamwork and being part of a team, being part of something bigger than you, because you can't do this by yourself. Um, and then hard work. That sounds crazy to a lot of people, but you've got to really enjoy hard work and that sense of accomplishment at the end of the day. And that is a big thing for a lot of them, is that sense of accomplishment. And that can be on so many different levels, whether it's we started with this tree and now this tree is in that truck, or whether it's pruning or whatever it was, or just thinking about, man, I'm doing something that 99% of the people in this world can't do, either physically or mentally. Like,
So how are you finding that? So passion, hard work, teamwork, sense of accomplishment. Are you identifying some of that in their resume, or that's all coming out during interviews, or how are you honing in and how are you finding those attributes with these candidates?
man, it's everywhere. You find it everywhere. We got our newest crew leader, our operations manager, stopped at a Wawa gas station one day, and this kid's working at the counter of a Wawa gas station. he had passion, he had energy, right? And the Bob's got his name is Billy too, and Billy said, or I think, however they started talking about it, and there was some interest there. Yeah, now he's a crew leader, running a crew, man, and he's phenomenal.
How would you say you get most of your candidates? Are you putting jobs out on a job board and sourcing resumes and bringing them in for interviews, or
Or are
how
you
much?
watching and observing and then asking people to come aboard?
Yeah, like what's the ratio?
We do definitely. We have some, guys that are referring their friends or whatever, and they're coming on. But um, like that has been super interesting and comical in a lot of ways too. Like they don't want to refer their friends because they don't trust that their friends can actually do it or do it right or live up to the values that we have and everything. Um, but they all have buddies, man. Like, and they just don't want to take that risk of looking bad to the team. We're a pretty tight group.
So when you do get the referrals, it's essentially that's somebody that's been vetted by the person who's going to refer them. It's like they're not going to refer somebody who's not going to deliver, so it ends up
That's
being.
a good way to do it in a way.
I mean, the thing is with this job too. I mean, it's that way with a lot, but we go out as like 3-man crews, and so if the three of us are going out, or let's say Travis, you and I are going out, and you're like, hey man, Brent wants to come and work, and everything, and Brent, you come out on a job and you're lazy and slow, like guess who's picking up the slack? That's you, Travis, because I'm up in the tree, right? So you're not bringing Brent back, or bringing him in the first place. Uh, but yeah, I think that's part of it too.
Yeah. One thing I liked on the pre-show notes was you had a personal goal of turning the industry into more of a profession than just the tree care, like an industry thing. What just elaborate a little bit on that for me. I like that mindset.
Yeah, because I don't know if that means the same thing to anybody else. I know what it means to me, um, but the it's all and this has always kind of been like the um, rough crowd, right? Rednecks and chainsaws, and their criminal records, drunks, druggies, whatever. Like, oh, if you can find one with a driver's license, man, you're doing good. Um, and yeah, that's not a profession, right? And so a profession to me being more where um, you're you're valued, you're appreciated, you're respected, um, your knowledge, people are trusting you, they see the value and they want to work with you, um, confidence, uh, they're okay with their son or daughter going into the profession. Like everybody, like I said, my parents struggled a little bit with me going to the tech center. My grandfather had a really hard time with me saying this is what I was going to do for a living. A friend of mine's dad told me I was probably 16, 17 years old, and he looked at me and he said, "You'll never make a living cutting grass."
Have you seen him since then?
I ran into him. It was probably 2 years ago at a Wawa gas station. We have a lot of Wawas.
Evidently.
at a Wawa gas station. I mean, I can remember it all, right? And he looked at me. He always called me John Boy. He said, John Boy. I knew exactly who it was when I heard that. And turned around. We were talking, and he said, I got to tell you, I remember saying something to you, and your reaction when I said it stuck with me. And I said, oh, yeah, well, what's that? And he said just that. He said, I remember telling you that you would never make a living cutting grass. I told him, I said, I remember that very clearly as well. And he said, man, if I could take that back now. I said, well, no, you were 100% right. I said, I don't make a living cutting grass, and I could not make a living cutting grass. I would not be able to do that. But that is fire for me.
You turned it into a fire, yeah. Instead of letting it beat you down, which
Yeah,
technically, yeah, you're not cutting grass now, but that little business led to what you're doing now, though.
yeah, absolutely. Now I can tell you, my oldest daughter, she's the exact same way. You tell her she can't do something, whew, you just pour gasoline on a fire.
It's almost the best thing you could do for the person, really.
But it's like the worst thing from if you're the parent. I had no idea like how much gasoline I dump around and on that fire, and it's not always good.
Yeah.
I should know how to do this, man. She's me.
Should be able to relate. Um, one question I did have, talking about like just getting started and that conversation you had with that guy, but to the listener that's that guy now, that young guy, if you were to start over today, what advice would you have given yourself back then?
Man, pick a different bit now. You know, it's I think the best opinion that I could give. I don't want to say advice. The best opinion that I could give there would be to be clear on your why. Um, be clear on your vision. Set a goal far bigger than what you think is even possible. Um, and make sure you are putting processes and structure in place from the very beginning, even though it doesn't seem like you need it and you don't even understand why you would, and it's time consuming. Um, but I don't care. Like you've got a process that you're doing, no matter what. You got a process every morning. You wake up and get out of bed. You have a process that we do all the time. We may deviate, but there is a process. But document it. And I hate doing all that crap, and I hate following processes. I break process. That's what I like doing. But it's for 22 years. The majority of it is in my head.
Well, I think that's a lot of entrepreneurs. It's just that, because I look back at that's probably the answer I would have given. Maybe a couple other things added to it, but that was one thing I didn't do at the beginning as well as I needed to, was the processes, because a lot of it is up here. And as an entrepreneur, you're just wanting to grow, grow, grow. So a lot of it is up here, but if you can't put it on paper, you can't replicate it as easily. Once you start making those hires and you start adding your team, you got to have something that you can replicate. So I think, it's funny that you say that, because that's one of the top three probably in my mind as, man, if I could talk to 22-year-old Brent, that's probably something I would say, hey, along with the growth, keep this in mind as well. And it will save you some headache in about 10 years, because that's what we end up dealing with about 10 years after we started, was kind of correcting some of that stuff. So that's interesting you bring that one up.
I would add to that and say to keep it simple.
Yeah.
That process, keep it simple. I think entrepreneurs, we have a tendency to oversimplify a lot of things when we're asking somebody to do something, or when we think that we can do this whatever it is. This won't take long. It'll be quick. It'll be easy. Whatever, we can do that. But then if we actually try to sit down and write out that process, and at least for me, I don't know if y'all have the same experience, but at least for me, man, I'll start thinking about every single scenario that could come up in there. And because I'm thinking that I'm going to hand this off to somebody else, I'm documenting this to give it to somebody else. I don't want them to have to come to me and ask. So let me create this 20-page document on how to send an email, and it just bogs you down. You never get it done. So you never get the process done. And even if you did, nobody is going to read it or follow it.
Mm-hmm.
So keep it super simple. Elon Musk, I don't know if Travis, you may have read that book. I think it's called Elon Musk. I listened to it on Audible. It's 20 hours long. I mean, it's like, but I couldn't stop listening to it. I mean, it's fascinating. That guy is fascinating. But with processes, his thing was delete, 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 delete. And you haven't deleted enough from a process until you have to add something back.
I like that.
I mean, it's like, that worked.
We had a professor in school that it was one of my favorite professors, and one of the favorite things he ever had us do. His wife was the literature and writing professor in the English program, and then he was the business dean, or whatever it's called, head of the business department. And he would take his essays from his wife's final from the last semester, block out the names, everything. These are 20-page essays. Hand them out to all of us in the business program, and say, nobody wants to read this. My wife hates that I asked, you guys to do this, but this needs to be a page or less, and don't miss anything important. Bullet point it, write it in the structure. And I've always said that was one of the best classes I ever took, because we are taught to do the other throughout, most of the educational system. But he's like, nobody wants to read that. Nobody has the time for it. And especially today, 2024, it's even worse than it was in 2000s, early 2000s. But that's kind of a similar thing. He said, take it back to the most basic until you need to add back to it. So it's funny that was obviously pre-Elon Musk, his book. But anyway, still, it's a very similar concept, though.
What is the saying, like, if you need me to talk for an hour, I'm ready to go right now. If you need me to talk for 15 minutes, I'm going to need a week to prepare. If you need me to talk for 3 minutes, I'm going to need a month to prepare.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So there's always a dichotomy too. If you don't want it to be too complicated, you can get analysis through paralysis, or paralysis through analysis, and constantly making things so cumbersome that you can't pivot, you can't break. It takes too much, and there's inefficiencies. There's just chaos in the sense that there's just so much to. But you can also oversimplify things too, in that you don't live in reality. And there's probably a balance. And then there's just another perspective too from a leader. I know I've done this, and I've been on the receiving side of this, working within organizations. I think we were talking right before we actually started recording about understanding, detaching away from your teams and giving them autonomy and allowing them to. That's how you can scale your business, as you give and empower some of your leaders, but then also you can also become too detached where you don't actually know what's going on. There's a story, and there's probably tons. If you think about it in your own personal life, we've all been through this. But there's a story that a former buddy of mine, from the military, but it was talking about an exercise they were going on, and it was showing how leadership can become detached from what their teams are doing, and the impact that your decisions, that your flippant decisions, you're like, hey, go do this, and not realizing the impact that it has on the crew, in that there is multiple steps. And the story that he was telling was that they were, I think it was exercises, it was training, but they were out on ship and they were going to do assaults on shore. And the higher command, the guy in charge of the exercise, is telling the crew like, all right, we're gonna do it. Where it's an amphibious landing, and you guys are gonna go on these smaller boats, and you're gonna infiltrate and get to the shore and do the attack. And so like, Roger that, got it. And, so I think this exercise is gonna be in the morning, and this is late afternoon prior to or something. So the crews all get together. They're all doing their planning, their fuel on board, how many boats do we have, weight and balance, how many crews are going to be on there, what equipment can we take, what do we have for backup, who do we need to communicate with. And then so they're starting to build out, and they're getting all the pallets, all the boats ready, and the crews assigned, and each team leader, and all the responsibilities, and now scuba tanks and things, and checking everything in the safety. And then about an hour and a half or 2 hours later, the captain or whoever was in charge is like, you know what? No, let's do helo. We need to do helo. He has no idea that all that work is being he for whatever from his mindset, it might have been like, hey, there's winds, or it would be better optics, or like something nuanced that he changed. Like, no, we're gonna do helo. And so since we're down, like, all right, everybody, put all the boats back up, take all the gear, reassign that stuff. We need to go get with the air crews and weight and balance and fuel and crews and timing. And then later on that evening, after they had kind of planned and it was a whole ordeal, like, no, let's go back to boats. And it was highly unlikely that officer was just doing it and knew everything that was happening and all the effort and time and frustration and things that was being put on multiple levels all across the board, not just that team, but all the supporting elements. It was more likely they had no idea everything that went into it. And the stress, and now you got guys that have been back and forth and jerked around and pissed off, and the stress levels who's now about to have minimal sleep to go do this operation. And it was more that the leader that was in charge that had no idea the processes and the things that were involved.
Well, it's like having those guidelines and those basic, guidelines to get there, but then also the leader needs to keep in mind, I have to, basically, he's going to begin with the end in mind. So if the leader always has that mindset of this is where we're going, this is how we're going to get there, the guidelines kind of serve as a way to keep you in that channel without going veering off all these different angles, and creating basically, in your example, the guy created chaos that didn't need to exist.
But in his mind, it was simple.
Yeah.
Like he thought process simple, just aircraft, but he didn't understand what was actually occurring and the downstream effects of a decision at that level.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Add to that, maybe take it in a different direction, and you can cut me off, give me the secret signal that we talked about. But I love playing devil's advocate. Like, that's just my thing. But if that captain, that leader, had good relationship, good rapport with everybody, right? When there's times where you need to make those decisions, and I'm not saying that this is that case by any means, but there's times where you put in all this effort and work to go in one direction, and then boom, the plug gets pulled and we're going to switch gears and go in a different direction. And it's information that they have that's causing that I may not have on the ground. But if we have a good relationship and good rapport, then I know, like, damn, this sucks, but I bet you I was going to get my ass killed if we had done it the other way. Now we're going helo. Thanks, boss. Roger that. Move it over.
And I think that's one of the biggest skills for an entrepreneur is being able to make those pivots like that. I think back to like when COVID hit, maybe a little bit outside of our business, a little bit, but not a lot. But that was a good example of watching different business owners and entrepreneurs either pivot and make it work and actually come out on this side probably a little bit better, or not do it, keep trying to do it the way it's always been done, and suffer.
Man, COVID was an absolute, I think that took 20 years off my life for sure. But, to sit back and watch it, or to think about it rather, like just fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And I remember going into a GNC store, and I guess it's a franchise. I don't know how that works, but I mean, the guy is just like moping, and I'm trying to remember there was a sign out on the road or something, um, something anyways, and he's like, I don't think I'm going to make it much longer, and da 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 da. And I'm like, well, what are you doing differently, man? How are you responding? How are you reacting? Like I wasn't even sure if you were open. I had to pull all the way up to the door, and then I even had to look inside to see if you were open. Like, where the hell is your banner? Screaming, I'm open, and signs throughout this parking lot saying, I'm open. Like, don't make me hunt it down. And you got a
Business
database.
model before he had foot traffic and he had people, so he didn't
He
have
was
to.
comfortable with that and wasn't thinking outside the box.
And it was organic. It was easy. You didn't have to do anything. It just happened. Like, man, and that's what we were talking about sales earlier, and we hate referring to ourselves as salespeople, consulting arborists, but at the end of the day, right? Like sometimes it's real easy, and sometimes you got to go out and work for it, and and that's what I'm always talking about. It's like it's been real easy the last 12, 14 years, real easy, except for when COVID, at the very beginning. Um, but yeah, you got to go out and nurture these relationships, not cold sales, just nurture the relationships sometimes. Think outside the box. It's not always going to be that easy. Um, but yeah, a week later he had, well, probably not even a week later, he had signs. I told the guy, I said, I will pay for the signs. If you can't afford the signs, I'll pay for them because it'll work. Scream and shout that you're here and open. And it was funny, that across the street, there was some other store. I don't remember what it was. Matter of fact, I think it was a restaurant, which all the restaurants were shut down initially, right? Except for entrepreneurs, man. They can solve the problem. Give them a challenge in just a little bit of time, man. That's what made me so mad about the harsh shutdown here in Virginia. But the entrepreneurs fought back like, oh, well, we're going to turn our restaurant into carry out, and you got the Chick-fil-A cup. I don't know how it is up there, man, but the Chick-fil-A dining hall is about a third of the size of what it used to be at every single Chick-fil-A around here because they're making so much more money on drive-through carry out, and they've got that process dialed in where it's quick. They don't need the inside space for people to sit there and take up real estate. Yeah, let's keep moving. Sink or swim, man. Like we're gonna make it.
Billy, you're involved. I think we got introduced to looting branches through Josh and Oak Bros, Josh Gouin and Jackie through Oak Bros, and fascinated to learn more about that. And I think we'll end up getting involved to some degree. But I think with you, you have an involvement too. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Looting Branches is a awesome nonprofit organization. This is actually our 10th year, so 10 years of dedication. Um, what we do as an organization is we organize arborists around the country to do an annual day of service at land that is dedicated to our veterans. So primarily it's at national veteran cemeteries, but it's expanded and we do a lot of the VA medical and drawing a blank on it now, the housing, but really any land that's dedicated to our veterans qualifies. So this past year, in 2023, we were at least one site in all 50 states, including one in Mexico and one in Puerto Rico. So believe it or not, we actually have veteran cemeteries overseas, where men and women are laid to rest overseas, not even in the States. And we're at over 100 sites in total, 4,000 volunteers, and so you're talking over $4 million in work that's given to make this land better, prettier, safer, more peaceful place for the men and women that gave it all for our country, or done so much for our country. To me, is the most humbling experience, most humbling thing I've ever been involved in. Anytime you talk to somebody that has participated in one of the annual days of services, you won't have somebody talking about it that will not use the word humbling in their description of it. It's a great, great honor to be a part of this organization.
So if anybody in the audience wanted to be involved with it, how would they get involved?
Yes, our website, salutingbranches.org. You can find the information there. I know we're on Facebook and all the social media stuff, but I think we were talking about it before we started recording. I don't have any of that stuff. I don't know what any of it is, so sorry, I can't point you in that direction other than go through the website and you'll get there. That's terrible, I know. I imagine you can go on Facebook or whatever and search for Saluting Branches and it will come up. There's, opportunities to support. So it costs about $45 for every volunteer. So it is, it gets expensive quick. So there's definitely opportunities to support. We're always looking for people that want to be a part of it, that believe in the cause. We were talking about the why earlier. Like that's your ideal supporter, somebody that wants to support because they really believe in what we're doing and they want to be a part of it and they want to give back. And then certainly it is almost every year is going to be the third Wednesday in September. There's a couple of times where there's some conflicts, but that's what we go for, is the third Wednesday in September every year. So you can go online, you can see the site, find a site near you, you can sign up and show up for the day of service. Even if you're not an arborist, there's stuff to do. All sorts of things that you can do. We'll find something for you to do. If there's not a site in your area, go online. We've got all the sites, or most of them, that can be added. If you let us know, you go online, you fill out a form, say, hey, I'd like to start this site, and we'll put that together. And we need a site leader, need somebody who's willing to take on that day and run it and identify what work needs to be done, kind of the scope of work, and coordinate the lunches and breakfast, snacks, all that stuff, the logistics of the day. And then we'll start, funneling volunteers to that site.
Love it. All right, I think we're going to wrap things up. Any final thoughts?
It's a mindset, and when you think everything is against you, because this is primarily entrepreneurs. We're entrepreneurs, man. Like, you're not alone. Get involved. There's so many organizations out there, whether it's trade organizations or different business organizations. I think like EO is one of the national ones, where it's a group of entrepreneurs or CEOs of small businesses, and you get together and you're from different industries. At the end of the day, man, for the most part, business is business. We all have the same challenges, the same problems. Getting help and ideas, solutions from other people that are creative and outside the box thinkers, or have been there and done that. That's, why make the same mistake that somebody else has made? Just if they're willing to help you and prevent you from doing that, man, take advantage of that. If you want the golden key, you can go up to anybody, no matter how successful they are. Pick the most successful person that you can think of. And if you go up to them and say, I would really like for you to be my mentor, they almost can't resist it. It's like such an honor to be called a mentor. So they're going to tell you yes.
But I think that's an important other side of that too, is find mentors and be a mentor.
Give back, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't
help the next generation, help your neighbor, help somebody else who's aspiring to do greater things. Be the mentor too, and give back. Billy, it's been so great meeting you, getting to meet Josh and some of the community there too that helped. I think Josh and Jackie introduced us to you, so thankful for that. Really appreciate the time that you spent with us, and we're gonna wrap things up here. So to the audience, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed it, please like it, share it. As Brent has said many times before, we don't get paid for this. The only exposure that we have, we hope that it's been impactful with the community, is if you help share it. So if you don't like it, turn it off. Thank you very much, Billy, Brent. It's been great seeing you guys.